Welcome to the Park Drive Podcast, a ministry of Eastern Shore Baptist Church. We're so glad you joined us today.
Welcome to our second episode of the podcast. We're so glad today to have Josh with us on the show, and just going to kind of get to know you a little bit, Josh. So I got a few questions for you.
Okay.
Number one, how did you meet your wife?
Well, my wife, Candace, and I, we grew up in the same town, small town in Mississippi, and our families knew each other. In fact, her mom used to cut my hair when I was little, apparently. She had a salon, and so our families knew each other, and I knew of Candace. But we actually met at a Relay for Life cancer fundraiser event when we were in high school, and we met at a rock climbing wall. It was one of the deals. They were selling tickets to climb the wall to raise money for cancer research, and somehow we ended up in the same area. And I obviously noticed her. She stood out, and I was making fun of all the people trying to climb the wall, and the people who were struggling to climb the wall, and kind of giving them a hard time. I saw she was kind of laughing a little bit, so it kind of encouraged me to keep making fun of people climbing up the wall. And then next thing I know, she pipes up and says, well, if you know so much about rock climbing, why don't you go climb the wall? And I tried to use the excuse that I didn't have any money to climb the wall, and there was another guy right behind me that apparently was tired of me talking, and so he handed me a $10 bill or whatever it was to go climb the wall. I embarrassed myself trying to climb the wall, and here we are 20 years later. So.
Did she climb the wall?
She did not climb the wall. She made fun of me as I tried to climb the wall. But we started dating shortly thereafter, dated for a while in high school, took a little break, about 2 years of a break, and then got back together in college and got married in 2008.
So did you go to prom together?
We did. We went to multiple proms, multiple homecomings together. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the whole high school sweetheart thing.
Yeah, the high school sweethearts with a breakup story in the middle and then get back together later on.
All good couples have a good breakup story.
That's right.
Well, so speaking of your family, know you got a couple kids, so tell us about your kids, their ages, what are they really into, how do they feel about your ministry, whatever you want to share with us.
Absolutely. So we have two kids. We have a son, Smith, who is 10. He just started 5th grade. And then Daily Grace, who is, she is about to turn 8, and she is in 2nd grade. They do a lot of stuff. So Smith is big into soccer. That's his biggest thing. He's a great student, loves school, but soccer is his passion right now. So he plays travel soccer kind of year round, and then he loves to play golf as well. Plays video games. He's a 10-year-old boy for sure. And then Daily Grace is into cheerleading. She's cheering right now for a little football team, and then she loves tumbling and gymnastics. Those are kind of their big passions. They love those things. They love spending time with friends and their grandparents. We're taking them to Disney World here pretty soon, so they're big Disney World fans. So those are a few of the things. And ministry, they love it right now. They're still young enough to where they get to hang out with all the teenagers all the time, and so they think they're teenagers a lot of the times. We had an event not too long ago where we were up here pretty late and playing a lot of games, and they were here the whole time and just kind of mixing it up with the teenagers. So they really enjoy getting to hang out with what they call the big kids. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, ministry life's interesting. It keeps you on your toes, and it is hard sometimes to raise kids in the church. That sounds crazy, but it's true.
Absolutely.
Well, that's great. Great that they're enjoying the ministry at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for as they get older, for sure. But
yeah.
Right now, they're still into it.
So speaking of your ministry, how long have you been doing this?
So I've been in student ministry for right around 15 years now. So started seminary in 2006, and then really kind of it's a little less than 15 years, about 14 years, I guess. But first kind of part-time gig was at my home church in South Mississippi, and so been in full-time church ministry for about 14 years, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good chunk of your life right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so who was like the person maybe in your life and your ministry, your mentor that you really felt poured into you and just made the biggest difference in your life up to this point?
Sure. In terms of student ministry early on, you and I actually were talking about this guy not too long ago, a guy named Alan Jackson, not the country singer. That's usually how he introduces himself. But he was a seminary professor at New Orleans Seminary, but he was also my youth pastor when I was in middle school. He was our interim youth pastor for a little over a year, I guess, and he really invested a lot in terms of understanding youth ministry and kind kind of the real purpose of youth ministry, gave me a passion for student ministry. But then at my home church, there's a guy named Keith Warden who's a pastor there. He's a pastor in North Alabama now, but Keith is still a guy that I call if I have a question about ministry, 15 years later. And he really kind of poured into me in terms of spiritually and a lot of wisdom. And then I have one more guy who is kind of a peer, but who's also a mentor. His name's Lewis Zink, who is a youth pastor in Mississippi. And he's probably my first call when I have some kind of question or something I'm praying about. And we kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And it's one of those kind of, in ministry, as you know, you got to have a safe place sometimes to just be able to say,
absolutely, hey,
look, man, here's what's going on, and I need you to pray for this. And what would you do if you were in this position? And so Lewis has been that for me for a long time.
Sure, that's so critical. I mean, obviously we go to the Lord with our concerns and our cares, and as Scripture tells us to do, but He also has people that walk beside us, and we're grateful for those folks. I know I've been grateful for those in my life as well in ministry. Absolutely. So really important. Yeah. So instead of being so serious, let's shift to a little more comical. We know that youth ministry in general is just full of some of those moments that you just can't forget.
All right.
And so share with us maybe the funniest trip or something that happened in an event or something that was just really memorable and you still laugh about it today.
Sure. The very first trip that I took students on, actually Candace and I were not married yet. I think we were engaged. And for whatever reason, my home church thought it would be a great idea to get us to take students on a mission trip to Mexico. It was the first time we had taken no little starter of like, let's go down the road to play putt golf or something. It was, hey, we're going to load up a 15-passenger van and take a bunch of kids to Mexico. And so kind of two things that were, I can laugh about them now, I was not laughing about them in the moment, but there was an issue where there were two teams from our church going. There was a group of men going to do construction work, and then we were taking a group of teenagers to do some orphan care work and some orphanages and whatnot. And apparently I was supposed to get a separate check from the group of guys. We were staying in the same place, but they got their check to pay for our lodging, and I was supposed to get a check and never got a check. So we showed up there, and I had no money to pay for anything. And so we started off that way, and I had to call the church financial secretary to deposit money into my checking account every day, but I could only withdraw like $500 at a time maximum from my account. And so I had to go to the bank every day to pay these people cash where we were staying. And that was pretty eventful. But in that same trip, I was also apparently supposed to take a young lady's suitcase with us. She was flying and meeting us there. And there was a failure to communicate on my end, I suppose, probably. And I didn't get her suitcase. So we got there, and she had no clothes, no anything for the whole week. And so we started our trip off by going to Walmart or something in Laredo, Texas, to procure a bunch of stuff for her, toothbrushes and all those kinds of things that she thought were meeting her there. And now one other story. It came from a choir tour several years back. We were, I think, in Texas for this one as well, and we were doing some work at a furniture. There's a shelter where they let some of the men and women work in a furniture store to sell used furniture. And so we were all in there putting together furniture, moving it into their display room and that kind of deal. And bus showed up to pick us up. We all got on the bus, got down the road 10 or 15 minutes, and I got a call from a young man who said, "Hey, you left me at the furniture store." He had fallen asleep on one of the couches in the back of the furniture store. Our head count apparently went a little too quick, and we missed him, and so we had to turn around and go back to the furniture store to pick him up. But he was good to go. He's all grown up and married and everything now, so he survived that
just gave him a good story to share for the rest of his life, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I know you do things other than just work around the church and chase your kids around to soccer games and stuff like that. So what are your hobbies?
Well, one of this still involves my kids a little bit, but one of my favorite hobbies is playing golf. So my son is a pretty good golfer, and so I love playing with him. And he does beat me every time we play, but I do really enjoy playing golf. And then I also do some woodworking on the side. So I like to build some things, build a lot of furniture for both our own home and then for other people as well. So woodworking has kind of become a little bit of a passion.
So what's your latest project you're working on?
Yeah, I'm building it's really a bookcase that's also a gun case, a gun cabinet on one side, and bookshelves and whatnot on the other side that I'm building for somebody. And so it's become a pretty big project, kind of taking on a life of its own. So we're working on that right now.
So you are doing some projects for other folks. It's kind of producing a little extra income for you, huh?
Yeah, a little bit here and there. So I try to not take on too much. My wife does like to have the garage free of shelves and tools sometimes as well. But yeah, we do try to build projects, and then obviously you and I were talking about this earlier. Every time I have a project, I try to come up with a reason to buy a new tool. So
absolutely, it makes the job easier and it makes you feel more manly, right?
That's right, exactly, exactly right.
Well, so what was your first project that you built?
Yeah, so the very first thing that I built was really out of necessity. It was not for someone else. Candace came to me one day and said, I would really like to have this coffee table. It was kind of as farmhouse furniture was really becoming super trendy, and she came to me with a Pinterest plan for this coffee table. And
Pinterest.
Yes, Pinterest. I think she showed me the original coffee table, and it was a little bit out of our budget. And she said, oh, hey, look, you can build this coffee table. I never really built anything. Grew up with a father who built everything and did things like that. I didn't really know what I was doing, and so... But we looked at the plans, watched a YouTube video or two. You can learn everything on YouTube, right? And so we ended up building that coffee table. It turned out okay, and so we moved on to a new dining table and kind of went from there. And next thing you know, taking orders for people. So.
You did quite a bit of work at your house, didn't you?
Yeah, our house we bought in foreclosure. It had Chinese drywall in it, so we had to go in and gut everything and redo everything from the HVAC to obviously all the sheetrock and electrical and plumbing and all that kind of stuff. So did a lot of that work ourselves and learned a whole lot. My father-in-law helped me tremendously, so we did a lot of work in that house and learned a lot the hard way. And made a lot of mistakes, but figured it out in the end. So
there you have it, Josh the handyman.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, we're going to do a second segment here in a minute and talk about your student ministry and what's going on here, and maybe major events throughout the year or whatever.
Absolutely.
But we'll take a little break and we'll come right back. So we're back. Just want to kind of talk about what's going on for the student ministry this year here at Eastern Shore Baptist. So Josh, just tell us about it.
Yeah. So we try to do a ton of stuff. We try to give students an opportunity to plug in a lot of different ways. And so this fall we have started a new series on Wednesday nights called Follow. We're going through the Gospel of Mark on Wednesday nights. We have an incredible youth praise band that leads us in worship every Wednesday night, and then there's teaching after that from the Gospel of Mark this fall semester. Really, we've got a ton of great events coming up starting in January. And so we've got Disciple Now happening, which is a great weekend for students to come together. They stay in host homes with their same ages and genders, and we have a great speaker lined up to come, a worship band as well that'll lead us. And so that's the weekend of January 20th. And then we have a huge event in the summer of next year coming up, Centrifuge Youth Camp. We're going to South Carolina, North Greenville University. It's the last week of June into the 1st of July. And so we're excited about that. Have things in between. We have a great leadership event. We take our high schoolers on. We call it the High School Leadership Retreat. We go during Mardi Gras break. So we'll be in Orlando, Florida. It's kind of a two kind of pronged trip. One, it's a reward for our high schoolers who are actively engaging and great leaders in our student ministry. Then also we take that opportunity to kind of pour into them and talk a lot about biblical leadership and what it looks like to be a leader. So nice. Those are a few of the big events that are coming up. Yeah.
So what would you say to? I know we've had some folks visiting. And they have some teenagers and stuff like that. What would you say to a student that doesn't know anything about Eastern Shore and they're coming in, they're intimidated, They're like, I don't know how to get involved. What's going on here?
Sure. Yeah, I think the first thing, and this is probably the hardest thing, is to be present. Like, in order to really connect, you've got to be here. And I really think that if your students will give it a shot, our students are super welcoming. obviously it always takes a little bit at first to really get connected, especially if you're kind of more reserved and a little apprehensive. But we've got a great group of students, great group of adult volunteers. And so I would say to be present, and then to be intentional, to really try to connect and really kind of go out of your way to try to make some of these connections. We also, something I didn't mention is youth choir, which obviously is close to your heart, right? And so with youth choir starting kind of with school this year, rehearsals on Sunday evenings, all culminating in a huge youth choir tour at the end of the school year, beginning of summer. And I always tell students, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, but I always tell our students, if you can make one trip all year, if you can only really swing one trip, forget about youth camp, forget about the other stuff, choir tour is a huge mission opportunity. And there's bus rides, and there's times where you're forced to be together with other students where those relationships begin to happen. I've seen a lot of students who are super reserved and apprehensive throughout the school year, and then you get them off on a trip with a bunch of other teenagers.
So true.
And they come back completely different and connected to other students, and it's a real game changer. Sure.
I think especially for these new folks that don't know anybody, it's a great opportunity for them to come to one more thing during the week and get to know some kids in a different way. Maybe they are singers, maybe they're not, right. But it's more about the community.
Absolutely.
And doing missions and all that sort of stuff. So we'll be sharing locations hopefully soon for next year's tour. But yeah, that's going to be a great time.
Absolutely.
So any last words you want to share?
Yeah, we would love to have you. If you're not actively involved, if you have a grandchild or a child that is a teenager, and when I say student ministry, we're talking specifically 7th through 12th grade. But if you have any students, or if you have any friends that aren't actively involved anywhere, we would love to have you connect. And all my contact information is all over the church website and Facebook and everything, and I would love to talk to you. And if there's specific kind of reservations you have, I'd love to answer any and all of those questions. So we would love to have you. We've got a great group of students, great group of volunteers, and I think that anybody who showed up to any of our services or ministry opportunities would not regret it at all. So
sounds great. Thanks so much, Josh. One more question. Most embarrassing moment?
Oh, most embarrassing moment. Golly. I've been embarrassed quite a bit in my life. Me not being able to come up with an answer right away is pretty embarrassing also. All right, I'll say this. This may not be suitable for everyone that's watching, but I was at a high school football game when I was in 8th grade, I guess, and we were in the student section, and somebody scored a touchdown or something. I stood up, and the kid behind me pulled my pants down. I was wearing like athletic pants, and dropped my pants right there in front of the entire student section. 8th grade. I was already not super popular in 8th grade.
Yeah,
it didn't really help my cause.
Pretty critical spot.
That was pretty brutal. So, speaking of pants, here's a better one. I should have said this. So, as a lot of you know, I do the scripture reading almost every Sunday in church. And so one Sunday morning, I was reading, is it Psalm 42, as the deer pants for the water? I can't remember if it's Psalm, whatever Psalm that is. That's embarrassing. I don't know what Psalm it is. I'm just adding to the list. Sometimes your eyes and your mind go faster than your mouth can go. And I was reading that scripture, and I think I read something to the effect of "my pants long for you" or something like that. It wasn't quite that bad, but it was something about pants it was supposed to be as the deer pants for the water. And I said something about my pants. And as I was reading, I skipped a line or something, and I just had to stop. Everybody's cracking up.
It was all over at that point.
I stopped, and I just said my pants, and everybody laughed for a few seconds, and then we proceeded with our reading. So that was my most embarrassing church moment for sure.
Keeps it light.
Absolutely.
It light. Well, thanks so much, Josh, for spending some time with us today.
Me, man. Enjoyed it.
And we'll see you next time.